So we're just starting the recording. I want to welcome everyone here. Thank you so much for joining. And just orienting our minds in the most positive way is I just like to start with some meditation to bring us here together. So no matter where we are on the planet right now, we can still find a centering way for ourselves. So again, if you are in a chair, have the soles of your feet on the floor. And if you're seated in a meditation posture with your legs crossed perhaps, just slowly allow yourself some comfort in this posture. If you'd like to close your eyes just lightly, and just allow slowly the inhalation and the exhalation to extend and to deepen. And feel the ground under your feet or under your seat, feeling in a sense, as we mentioned last week, the roots of planet Earth are there supporting you. So in that way, we are all connected. We are all of this planet right now, residing here. So one thing I find that helps with basic kindness to myself is allowing the breath to slow down and feeling the positive rootedness. So this is not a leaden feeling. This is support for our practice, for our minds. As you deepen your breathing, take a minute or two to scan your body from the top of your head down and through your feet and toes. And just check any places you find you're holding tension. Using that inhalation to open up space in the tense areas. On an exhalation, allowing the tension to release. And take a moment to connect with your purpose for being here right now. Self-compassion can be enormously helpful in helping us to be kinder to others. So that may be a particular area of interest for you. Or it could just be that some of us need caring for ourselves because we're caring for so many others. Both are equally important. So finding that way, reflecting on that purpose, take a moment and direct your mind in as positive a way, positive direction as you can, setting that motivation for this evening. So please relax and slowly can open your eyes. So we were talking, and I want to ask, can you hear the sounds from my window? Is it distracting? It's not too bad, okay, because I've got some dogs barking, I've got the birds, and I've got the neighbors' kids. It's a fun neighborhood, actually, but let me know. We are going to use sound a little later, so it will be helpful. Of course, when I need it, it will be dead silent, of course, as usually happens. So, but we started talking last week about looking at first what prevents us from experiencing compassion and kindness to ourselves. And we started looking at mindfulness. And basically, I'd like to break this down into three components that we touched on a little bit last week, but mostly we were talking about mindfulness in directing self-compassion. And mindfulness is one of the components. And another one is understanding our shared humanity, I call it. We're all interconnected and everything is interdependent. So that's another way that allows us, and I use that word a lot, allowing things. We're not forcing something. I'm not suppressing and repressing something. Self-compassion, we find our way into allowing. So understanding that we're all connected has a big effect on that and allows us to be kind to ourselves. The last category is the self-kindness, the loving kindness, and how we direct that and work on that. So we just started last week getting into what we're going to get into also this week is what prevents us? What are the obstacles? And then we're also going to do some more exercises, but the last couple of weeks are going to focus also more on what do I do? How do I fix it now? You know, I'm ready to go through and embrace self-compassion, and what do I do? So I'm just going to present some ideas. Again, I want to mention a couple books I've read, and I've been looking at self-compassion courses for years now, but I mentioned last week recommending Kristen Neff has a book on self-compassion and a workbook, can be very helpful, and Christopher Germer, and they sometimes do things together, and they both have websites you can check, and there's some exercises on their websites and things like that. And he has a book on self-compassion as well that I really like. So I'm going to be using and pulling some exercises from them and things that I found really helpful in my own passage. So I hope it's helpful for you as well. And one thing I want to look at right now are, and last week we were looking at a little bit of you know, what prevents us at times. You know, how do you respond to something? Do you respond with kindness? Do you respond with space and generosity? Or do I respond to myself when I mess up with something else? So let me just, let's find this one thing to think about here. Oops. So something I want to think about is just with basic mindfulness at the beginning, how do you look at what you're doing of daily activities and things? Is there a less than compassionate response? And here's something about, are we at least refraining from not harming ourselves? And we have to start being mindful and take a little assessment. And it's something you could do 15 minutes a day. As a little exercise, I ask if you'd like to, for the next week before the next class, 15 minutes each day, could you just check in a 15-minute period, are you being kind to yourself? What self-critical thoughts come up in 15 minutes? So you're just doing a daily activity. You're having coffee, you're reading the newspaper, you're checking your email, you're washing dishes, you're taking a walk outside, you're doing some sort of exercise, you're working. Whatever you're doing, I just want you to notice in 15 minutes every self-critical thought that arises, every lack of generosity to yourself in 15 minutes. And make little notes. You might just make little notches on a piece of paper, okay? You can keep track somehow. Maybe you set up something on your phone where you click, but it's just a 15-minute period. So the beginning is to start to get aware of what I'm doing. And here's another thing to think about. I want you to consider the following. Just think about it. How do you brush your teeth? Do you brush them gently? You know, with a happiness, it kind of, I can do this for my oral hygiene, like it's a nice thing. I'm happy. Do you brush your teeth harshly, kind of scrubbing at the gums? It's one thing to look at. Okay. Do you rush around in the morning when you get up? Do you wake up with a groan and kind of limp around for a while? Or is it different? So is it one of those aspects of rushing around, or does your body feel tense or stiff from a lack of exercise? Do you go around a lot of your day like that when you get up from a chair? Are you sore? Just looking at certain experiences for you. Just, this is not good or bad. Okay, and I want to try to deflect us, as we started to mention last week. The exercise and reflections I might suggest, okay, check your mind, even if you start going into oh, well, that's good and that's bad. Oh yeah, I did that, so I'm bad. I'm just getting you, mindfulness is we're just observing. We're observing from a detached place. Okay, doesn't mean I don't care if I'm detached. Sometimes you care more when you're detached, but from a position as observer, I'm just watching and looking. Oh yeah, I brush my teeth, kind of scrubbing at the gums. You might say, okay, period. You don't have to over elaborate on that. Oh, that means I'm really aggressive towards myself. No, I just notice that's what I'm doing. Okay. For instance, here's another thing to notice. Are you tired a lot? Or do you have a lot of energy? Okay. Do you overeat? A lot of people have told me in this period they've been eating out of boredom. I think most people on the average have gained about 5 pounds. Just from, my sister-in-law, the note on her refrigerator says, you're not hungry, you're just bored, go away. Okay? Now that can be an act of self-kindness. It's with humor, like it's funny when you see it. She uses it with humor. It's not attacking herself like that. Do you get stuck? Do you feel you're stuck in front of a computer a lot of the day? You're just observing your habits right now. Do you resent going to so many social events or wanting to when we were socializing more? Like that. Do you rage at politicians that you see on the news, on your computer, on your phone, on clips? Do you rage at them? Do you have to speak with your mother every Sunday? So I'm just giving you a few little things. Is most of the harmful things we do to ourselves are unconscious habits. Okay, and because I haven't stopped to be mindful to look, okay, is I'm not really aware of what I'm doing. So all I'm asking you to do is to be observant right now, basic mindfulness, and ask ourselves, why am I doing that? Is there a good reason for it? Okay, if your work necessitates you being at a computer, be at a computer. There's nothing right or wrong or good or bad about it, okay? But I did a training Saturday, Sunday, the first part of a training, and it was 3 hours Saturday and 3 hours Sunday. It's a long time like that. So what I did is I positioned my computer so I could stand during the training, and that worked better for me. So there are people that feel part of the computer time might be standing if sitting in a chair is jamming them so much. How does it come about? From me being mindful that I'm just sitting too much. That's all. And that the sitting, every time I got up from sitting, I was stiff. So then I went, well, maybe sitting all day isn't the best thing. Self-compassion. This is how we start to get into it. Okay. So the first question you want to ask, okay, when you start practicing self-compassion is this harming me? Is this harming me? If it is, drop it. Okay. Can you drop it? But I would recommend dropping it. Okay. And when you know how it feels to feel good, and when you think you deserve it, okay, a red flag will go up when you're harming yourself. And then you'll probably more automatically stop doing it. Okay, so the beginning is this the best way to brush my teeth? Do I really want to go around being tired all day? Okay, and then I want to look at what's making me tired. Well, I went to bed too late and I got up, I didn't get enough sleep. So what does that tell you? Something smarter, maybe I need to go to bed earlier. Is it hard to change a habit? Absolutely. But don't you want to feel better? Absolutely. Decision time, okay? And you try your best, that's all you do. Habits don't change easily, so please give yourself a break. Please give yourself some space. We just try, okay? So we also look at mental habits, okay? Mental habits often are unconscious, okay, that causes trouble. For example, if your attention gets very distracted normally, okay, then you can get very agitated. And I know some people when they're working trying to get something done, but they tend to distraction, okay, then they find they're not getting anything done, then they feel guilty, okay, and then they launch into a habit that tends to not be great for them. So here's the thing again that we talked about a little bit last week is understand that distraction is a normal sequence of human nature because it used to be a survival mechanism. It was a survival mechanism. When we were out in the bush with animals that could eat us, living like that, okay, you needed to be on high alert the way animals are in the wild so that we could survive any attack. So it's a normal state of our being. So mindfulness supports us and lends us more support in the distraction is, let me be mindful of it, okay? And a lot of us are developing meditation practices. So that helps me to take control of that distracted mind because I don't need it as much anymore because I'm not in that survival mode, okay? But it's innate, it comes in there instinctually. So just to understand it for that, okay? Plus we have a fast-paced world. Plus there's now computers and technology and social media that now over-contribute to distraction even more. The internet, again, I've mentioned this in other courses, taking your mental ability and your consciousness and your focus and your mind, okay? And the internet, bring it into a very small space. Your phone, it could be something very small, some little clip of something, but the internet's taking everything into this condensed space only to scatter it into a million different pieces because that link leads you to that link, okay? So again, we just want to understand, oh, okay, so this is what I'm dealing with. This is just the natural state of my mind and I'm gaining better control over it. I'm trying. That's the best you can do, okay? Is just try your best. Okay. Now I'm going to go back. Okay, so one thing I'm just looking for this one little passage. We don't, when we're practicing and trying to work and trying to introduce ourselves to self-compassion, which has enormous benefits, different from self-esteem. I want to make a distinction, different from self-esteem. Self-esteem is very evaluation oriented, ratings. It courts competition and overambition and things like that, because it's all necessarily about your worth and how you're rated. And often it can be around how others see you. So self-compassion is showing up, and I mentioned last week as well, this is about turning into our problems and facing them. So you're looking at yourself, okay, with all your glory and all your obscurations at the same time. And self-compassion says, yes, this is who I am, okay? Self-esteem will want to transform the obscurations infinitely, like to see it, and then I'm going to fix it. We're not into fixing necessarily with self-compassion. This is about accepting. Here I am. I'm good enough, right? And then in a sense, I sometimes think of my arms around it, embracing all of it. So there are things we do that we mess up, and I'm a human being, and that's part of the nature of being a human being. And then there's some things I do really well, and it's allowing those to be acknowledged by myself. It's not that other people see them. I have to feel good enough about a compliment and accept it. Okay, not in an overly arrogant way, in a balanced way. Okay? So again, when you suppress some of the negative parts of yourself, and this is a quote, is when you resist something, okay, it goes to the basement and it lifts weights, right? So everything we try to suppress and deny about the obscurations of ourself somehow comes out and rears its head even more. So this is about teaching us the knowledge and the skills to face suffering from a position of strength. And I can't really show you the intuition. I can't give you the intuition about whether it's safe for you to do it at any particular moment, meaning turning toward the pain. That's something you yourself would have to determine. For people with a lot of trauma, okay, you need to take a very gentle approach and figure out what works best for you. Slowly, gradually, okay, to turn into the pain, because that's how we become more self-accepting. Okay, and we're all sensitive beings. Okay, even if you don't show it, and even if people think that you're a tower of strength, we're all sensitive beings. So you yourself learn to use your intuition to develop that, to distinguish between safety and discomfort. Feeling vulnerable or uncomfortable doesn't necessarily mean you're unsafe. Okay, hurt doesn't necessarily mean harm. So we need to start to distinguish, to know the difference, okay, if you want to live your life to the fullest, okay? So we usually tolerate all manner of difficulties to lead a meaningful life. And life in samsara, as we know, will have a lot of difficulties and a lot of challenges. So, and one example I give you is, if you want to have children, okay, and that's an important value for you, okay, you will risk the pain of childbirth if you're a female to pursue that dream of having children, okay? So there's a lot of things we'll tolerate in developing the meaning in life. Wisdom is the quality of knowing the short and long-term consequences of our actions and choosing a path of the greatest long-term meaning and benefit, okay? Sticking to our deepest commitments and values, okay, despite the obstacles, is wise because it yields a long-term happiness, okay? And I like to seek a middle way between facing and avoiding. Okay, so I'm going to look at some difficulties, especially ones that come up habitually, and I keep my motivation in place. Why am I doing it? I want to shine. I want to be better. Why do I want to do that? I really want to be there for others. Okay, and then I also want to celebrate the positive things that are going on for me. I don't want to forget that just in the work of slogging through the difficulties. So there's a balance. So, and there's days I feel fragile, right? There's days you feel fragile. I'm sure that you can't do it. There's days you do limp around all day, okay? That I feel like I can't meet the challenges, but that's only one day. And everything changes. So know that tomorrow most possibly will be different. And don't you already notice, especially those of you meditators, that every day your mind's different, isn't it? Isn't it fascinating? You know, even when I'm on retreat and I might do 4 or 6 sessions a day of the same sort of practices like that, I notice that in every session, sometimes my mind's different, okay? But it's still the same mind. It's my mind, okay? But it's interesting how sometimes it's up and really concentrated, focus. I might have a few sessions, maybe a few days like that, and then a few days, nothing's working. Completely distracted, can't get anything done, wasting time. We embrace it all. Okay? So going more into what is self-compassion, and again, this is from this poet, Naomi Shihab. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. So they go side by side. They go side by side. And self-compassion is really one of the most natural things in the world, okay? If you cut your finger, you go and you get a Band-Aid to put it on, to stop the bleeding. It's the most natural, innate thing that we are in touch with, okay? So where did we go wrong? What happened, okay? What happens with when our emotional well-being isn't really being fed and we get off balance, okay? And so again, understanding that from our ancient days, when we were on the planet as cave people, wherever we were, battling animals that could kill us and things, there was a natural tendency to focus on the fear and danger and what was wrong, okay? Instinctively also what we did wrong. What we did wrong so we wouldn't do it again. Why? So we could survive. So same like distractions, so we could survive, okay? But understanding now things are a little different, okay? So now we want to gain more control over that kind of wild person's mind. Why? So I can have a more meaningful, fulfilling life, okay? So when we use mindfulness, and again, I wanted to bring these 3 components. Let me just say a little bit more about those. See if I can find my notes on the sorry, my notes got a little disorganized here. Here it is. Okay, Kristen Neff talks about 3 core components, and I just reverse the order of them. She has mindfulness last. I like to talk about mindfulness first, but she talks about self-kindness, loving kindness, sometimes I'll call it, that we be gentle and understanding with ourselves rather than harshly critical and judgmental, okay? The other thing I like is a recognition of our common, or I call it shared humanity, okay? Feeling connected with others in the experience of life rather than feeling isolated and alienated by our suffering. And the third is mindfulness, but I use that first. When we hold our experience in balanced awareness, okay, rather than ignoring our pain, rather than exaggerating our pain, okay? We must achieve and combine these three essential elements to be really, truly self-compassionate. It really seems to be the easiest thing. Self-kindness, and well, here's three things that happen when we get separated from self-compassion. Is when bad things happen to us, you tend to have three unfortunate reactions, okay? Self-criticism, self-isolation, and self-absorption, okay? So just notice, and one thing I want to do with a really simple meditation right now, really simple meditation. Of course, now I'm not going to have any sounds, okay? But you have sounds also in your environment, which is fine. I want you to just find your way into a comfortable position again. This is a really simple meditation that I find starts to chip away when we get self-critical, self-absorbed, self-destructive, everything that gets in the way of our self-compassion. Just using a basic sound meditation right now. So what I'd like you to do is lightly close your eyes. And find your way just to settle on the breath. And I'd like you to open up now to any sounds in your environment. And in a way, as if your ears are like satellite dishes, they're picking up any sound in the environment. And just sit right now and receive the vibrations. There's no need to label or like or dislike any of it. See if you can play with that without a need to focus on any sound in particular. Let the sounds come and go. There's no need to search out sounds. And when the mind wanders, simply return it to the sounds. So now, I'd like you to note when the mind labels a sound. But just note it with simply, in your mind, labeling or thinking or judging. Please relax. Slowly open your eyes. The nice thing with some basic mindfulness practice that many of you have done already in general is we get to know our minds. And how often do we just sit in this sound meditation is a preemptor for something we're going to do in the next couple sessions, is about full appreciation of good things when they happen to us and walking into that room. And some of you already do that. But practicing the kindness with ourselves, figuring out what exercises, what activities bring that to you, and then being there with it. So mindfulness allows us to be more. How often have you just sat? Some of us do this in our daily practices, but you just sit quietly and be. Maybe allowing yourself to be in meditation, as I've mentioned in practices before, to be in meditation, okay? Meaning instead of I'm meditating now, and you're in a session trying to meditate, okay? And then maybe there comes a thought, I'm not meditating. I'm not meditating well. I'm making a list in my mind. I need to do that. Okay, and then the next step comes judgment. I can't meditate. My practice isn't going well. I didn't practice for 2 days. I'm awful. Okay, right there, mindfulness creates the pause. Please pause. Okay, globally, we've had a big pause right now. So now bring it into your practice. Push the pause button there. There I am. I'm brushing my teeth, scrubbing away with some underlying anger and frustration. Okay, but I'm just noticing it right now. Mindfulness brings in the bare awareness. So it was interesting with the sounds when I just said, now the second tier is note. Start noting, oh, I just put a label on, but I'm just labeling. And oh, I'm judging something. Well, the dog's barking really loudly, but you know what? I'm just noting that I'm judging. I'm not laying a big trip on myself that I'm judging and I'm bad. I just noted judging. Okay, so for a second, do you see the difference? It's important to see the difference because a lot of times it's a very rigid, I'm judging now and I'm bad and I shouldn't be judging and I'm very critical. But what if I'm just noticing the self-criticism coming in? I just noticed it, I notice it's there because it's a habit. and I'm working on it. Okay, catch the and I'm working on it. And right now, that's the best I can do. Okay, I mentioned last week the Sharon Salzberg exercise. Again, another book I love, her book, older book, Loving Kindness. Please read that. It's a really nice book. Sharon Salzberg, Loving Kindness. Okay, so I mentioned her rushing to get, she was leading a metta retreat. I think it's Spirit Rock, Loving Kindness retreat. Leading retreat, she gets a message, a friend has died, she has to leave early. She's also rattled about the death, of course, but packing quickly in her room, right? She knocks over a glass, it shatters on the floor, and she turns immediately and says, "You're so stupid," to herself, right? And then adds, "And I love you." So this is about the adding, "and I love you." So we're starting to notice, you're so stupid. Okay, well, sometimes that comes up, right? And I love you. I'm here with you. Me here with my mind, doing the best I can. Okay? Okay. Another thing I want to talk about are, and these are kind of, sometimes they're called schemas, kind of ones that relate to you so closely. These are behaviors, and these are our negative behaviors that happen. So I want to read this list. Feel free to take notes if you'd like, okay? And I want you to just notice, what are the ones that go on for me? These are your hooks. Where do you get hooked? And where do you end up holding on? Things like this. Let me read you a few of these. Abandonment or instability. Abandonment or instability. Here's a line. This is what you tell yourself. My close relationships will end because people are unstable and unpredictable. My close relationships will end because people are unstable and unpredictable. Or does your mind go to mistrust/abuse? I expect to get hurt or be taken advantage of by others. What about emotional deprivation? I can't seem to get what I need from others, like understanding, support, and attention. Here's another one, number 4. Defectiveness or shame. I'm defective. I'm bad or inferior in some way that makes no one want to love me. How about social isolation or alienation? I'm basically alone in this world and I'm different from others. Another one, dependence or incompetence. I'm not capable of taking care of myself without help on simple tasks and decisions. Here is vulnerability to harm and illness, which says, danger is lurking around every corner, and I can't prevent these things from happening. Enmeshment or undeveloped self. I feel empty and lost without guidance from others, especially from people like my parents. Here's another one, failure. I'm fundamentally inadequate, stupid, inept, whatever you want to say. You can substitute a lot of words, compared to my peers and will inevitably fail. Another one, entitlement or self-centeredness. I deserve whatever I can get, even if it bothers others. Insufficient self-control or self-discipline says, I have a hard time tolerating even small frustrations, which makes me act up or shut down. How about self-sacrifice? I'm very sensitive to others' pain and tend to hide my own needs so that I'm not a bother. Or maybe you're subjected to the approval-seeking recognition seeker. Getting attention and admiration are often more important than what is truly satisfying to me. Or do you tend to negativity and pessimism? I tend to focus on what will go wrong and mistakes I'll probably make. Some of us suffer from emotional inhibition. I avoid showing feelings, good and bad, and I tend to make a more rational approach. You could also be hypercritical. Hypercritical. I'm a perfectionist. I'm focused on time and efficiency and find it hard to slow down. And some people feel, in a sense, a punishment. I tend to be angry and impatient, and I feel people should be punished for their mistakes. So you might, of those, I'm sure a couple of them jumped out for you. So what's helpful, and sometimes in traditional Buddhism, and let me just check, did they resonate with some people? Oh yes, a little bit too much, right? A little bit too much, okay. But we're all okay here, we're all in this together. So take a deep breath, there's no problem. In fact, there's no problem at all because we're looking at them. Certainly no problem. When you don't look at them, I think that can become a problem. That can grow into a problem. So what's helpful is identify one or two of the main ones. And what we do in traditional Buddhism is we tend to look at something like, we use a lot of different things to deal with what I'll call delusion or obscuration. And sometimes when I say delusion, I mean a mental imbalance. And delusion is, and I'll give you, we all know examples of this: anger, fear, anxiety, attachment, confusion, pride, jealousy, depression. I think you get the idea, these imbalances. So often when these come up, which are rooted in those schemas that I listed, and the schemas actually come from there, and they really are all rooted in fundamental ignorance, that overriding confusion we've had since beginning this time. But what they often say is go after your biggest delusions first. So identify the one or two that jump up. And right now, psychologically, these psychologists have broken them down into these kind of behaviors, okay? So you can kind of look, they're just defining them a little bit more. But if you want to go into just confusion, ignorance, anger, attachment, jealousy, things like that, feel free to take that, but they tend to molt into one of those schemas, okay? Okay, and when you exercise, and you can look at this the next week if you'd like to, okay? You can, number one, here's an exercise, list when you notice one in operation. So we're gonna take our basic mindfulness. I know nobody's perfect with it, but basically I'm gonna kind of look at when vulnerability arises. Okay, that's one that comes up for me, vulnerability. Vulnerability arises, and I'm gonna notice, and I might notice first that through the day, something was irritating me. I could have had a phone call with somebody that triggered the vulnerability, but instead of looking at the vulnerability, I had another habitual tendency that I got into, okay? And that started operating. And then with mindfulness, I was able to say, oh, well, why was I so off balance and upset during that phone call? How come everything before the phone call, I was fine. Everything was going really great this morning. I was really active and kind of focused in what I was doing. And I had a really nice session of practice and got these things done I wanted to do. And then this phone call, and like, when did things change? Okay. And one example I give is, it was so helpful for me. And I want to use this word. I want to ask you to please start. Can you include this word in your life from now on? I love it. Curiosity. It happens to be my favorite word right now. You know how you go through different words? Curiosity. Also, allowing has really been helpful for me. But curiosity, and the reason is, you mess up, and we all do. We've all been there. We will be there again, okay? You mess up and you immediately go into one of the schemas and get down on yourself. I'm crap. A lot of people have that habit, okay? Now I get curious. So I'm not laying so much the trips, but my exercise of self-compassion has gotten me to curiosity. So then I say, well, wait a minute, what happened? And thank you, because I learned this from my guru, Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Because many years ago, I remember we were having a discussion at Land of Medicine Buddha. We were walking up the hill there together, just the two of us, and something happened, and I was explaining something about this retreat that I did, and things were well, and then I returned to Vajra. I took a leave of absence, then I came back to Vajrapani. I was the director at the time. I came back, and then I said, and then somehow this happened, this negative thing happened, and I couldn't deal, or this was really a problem, whatever was going on, how. And then Rinpoche turned really quickly to me, like swept around right in my face almost, really fast. And he said, what changed? What changed? Like to kind of catch me, for me to get curious about what changed. And I'll never forget that, because I've used it so much ever since, of what was the change? What was the dynamic? And I had to go back into some habitual tendencies and look at my self-absorption. Again, it's one of the things that harms yourself, and look at the self-critical talk, and look at these different things that I had set up of what changed. So now I get curious. So the morning's going along swimmingly well. Phone call comes. It pushes a button of my vulnerability in my case. That happened to be one thing, right? And we have many of the schemas operating. I'm just picking on one for myself. And suddenly I was able to trace it back and go, oh, okay. Everything changed after the phone call. What was that about? Oh, yes, it tripped into my vulnerability. That's all. That's okay. But that's one of my things. Take a deep breath and go back in. And then what you want to do at that moment, when you can identify, and you try your best to identify, try your best to find the moment of the change, to find the swing where I was going along well, and boom. You can also start to identify the swings when you're in a bad mood and suddenly something brightens. Suddenly something is opened up for you and you feel better. Check the change again. Get curious about what shifted. A lot of times you'll find I started to take myself out of myself. I lessened the self-absorption. Again, one of the harming implements, okay? Here's what I want you to do. Can you list, number one, can you stop for a moment with mindfulness at that moment? Notice the sensations that arise in your body. Just first, when the schema takes over, the vulnerability, I'm saying in my case, arises, I just want to notice, first of all, mindfulness of the body. Doesn't usually feel good in my body, I'm aware, but I just want you to notice, where does it manifest? Are you holding it somewhere in your body? I was just working with someone, okay, who's had a lot of lower back pain. What are they storing? Okay. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not going to profess being any expert, anyone. I'm not. I'm an ordinary person, just working on my own mind, okay? But working with this person that's had a lot of back pain, and slowly looking at one of these habitual patterns and tendencies, they store it in their back. As soon as they thought about it, their back hurt. As soon as they thought about this one thing, their neck tightened, and they noticed. I had a girlfriend who went to one of these newer age techniques or holopathic treatments. She was getting treated by someone, and she had all this neck and shoulder pain, and she couldn't kind of sort it. And then as soon as she got in there, and she was putting her bag down on the chair and whatever, and the practitioner across the room said to her, so I hear you're living with your mother right now. And she noticed, just all of a sudden she went, yes, I am. Like, she had to laugh at herself of how apparent it was. But you need to start to see where you're storing it in your body. Does your throat constrict? Does your heart start racing? Do you get a pain in your stomach? Does your back hurt? Does one shoulder go up? So and you're just noticing. Again, we are not fixing right now. We are noticing. And really, self-compassion isn't about fixing. It's the overall allowance and acceptance. Okay. Number two, we want to look at when you get one of these negative tendencies, habitual tendencies in operation. Okay. Number two, what emotions go with this particular behavior, with this schema? What emotions come up? Like that. For me, with vulnerability, fear arises. And then sadness is often there, I've noticed. So you just want to, we're just noticing, because this is what I start to put out. This is what I start layering onto myself. Okay. Another thing you can consider, number 3, what you're likely to be thinking when this is operating. And I guess, again, if you are hypercritical, you might be thinking, I'm a perfectionist. Okay. I need to make this work. I need to be efficient. I need to be productive. I know some people that have said to me so much during this 2-month quarantine, whatever, however long it's been now. And they've said to me they feel guilty because they're undisciplined and they don't feel like they're getting much done. Okay. Well, this is an unusual time for the planet. Isn't it okay that we maybe don't get everything done? Don't you need to kind of take care of yourself, especially in the beginning of this? People were pretty freaked out. So isn't it okay to give yourself some nourishment at times? And in the beginning, people weren't sure if they'd be able to get to the store to get enough food, so people were hoarding. We didn't know. You know, they were giving us lists of things like, make sure you have enough cash, make sure you know, and it scared people. So it's natural that your mind's not going to be focused on working as efficiently and getting everything done. We didn't even know how we would work in the beginning. You know, now you notice some of you are in a little bit of a routine, and it's been okay. You've got your thing, you've got your exercise going, you got your practice going, you got those books read, you got this happening, you know how to socialize with certain people, you got your Zoom stuff happening. Okay, so just look at what you're likely to be thinking. Okay, number 4 is how you typically act when this type of schema or behavior is engaged. Okay, and if you don't relate to any of those schemas, make up your own of what goes on for you. Okay, but how, again, do you typically act when the schema is engaged? Like for me, when vulnerability comes up, and if I'm with some people I don't feel safe with, I might have a tendency to verbally snap at someone. I may withdraw. I may choose to leave early if it was like a scene with some people. Leave abruptly early. Like I used to do things like that. Okay. So I'm just kind of noting how, you know. So here's where you can get a little bit of an idea on self-destructive thinking. Okay. We're identifying mental themes that lead us to bad feelings. Okay. That lead us to bad feelings. For instance, if negativity and pessimism is one of your things, ask yourself what you say to yourself over and over that supports the pessimism. Are you kind of like, why bother? Why bother? Why bother? Oh, this is such a waste of time. Nothing good will come out of this. Is that what starts to go on swimming in your head? Okay. If your scheme is social isolation, for instance, you might think, you know, I'm the only one that this happens to. I'm the only one that this happens to. Or if a great opportunity presents itself to you, you might say, well, that might work for her, but that won't work for me. I'm different, you know? Okay. So again, you just want to observe. You just observe these thoughts arise and disappear, okay, with mindfulness in spacious awareness. They're just arising and disappearing in spacious awareness as you get to know your mind more deeply. Recognizing these behavior patterns with awareness, with this mindfulness, okay, and being kind to ourselves in the midst of an active schema that's operating is self-compassion. Okay. So again, I might just notice the sweep of the negative mind state. Okay. And just by recognizing that, okay, and then taking a deep breath in it is kindness to myself. Taking a deep breath in it and saying, you know, sometimes I feel this way. Sometimes I feel this way. That's my self-kindness in mindfulness. If I want to add that other component of shared humanity, I might suddenly think, wow, a lot of people feel vulnerable, especially now. A lot of people feel vulnerable. You know, I'm not in this alone. I'm not in this alone. And it lends buoyancy right there. But that's a kind thing for myself rather than I'm the only one that is experiencing this. This is awful. And then if we want to bring Buddhism's impermanence, sometimes these negative mind states, we feel we will be like this for all time. Changes, the mind changes. We're in a process of changing the mind right now. That's exciting. That's exciting. So everything changes. And the interesting thing too is I'll notice if I'm ever in a down mood, often I'll have a little thing in the back of my mind from my self-compassion is, oh, tomorrow will be different. Everything, my mind changes all the time. So tomorrow, most probably, it'll be different. If it continues for a second day, it's still changeable in there. It's not stuck like that. So I give myself, self-compassion allows more fluidity than rigidity. And we like that space of the mind, the fluid mind, like that. So let's see. I find that the labeling and the noting of these types of behavioral patterns or schemas, okay, I find is a very effective way of managing emotions, in a sense, it dissolves a whole cluster of destructive thoughts, okay, of destructive feelings, destructive behaviors, with one burst of kindly awareness, okay? Oh, and I might even say to myself, okay, there's your vulnerability. There's your vulnerability, Amy. Like, that's all that is. It's just that. That's just one of my things. Somebody else has something else, or oh, there's my anger, my irritation, right, rearing its head, just like that. So if you want more on these behaviors, Tara Bennett Goldman, in her book is, but you can look up some of her things. She talks about that in dealing with destructive emotions and things like that. She and her husband have written books about this. I found them really helpful, like that. So when we understand exactly how a schema shows up in our lives, we're more likely to catch it, to be aware of it. We feel them, okay? I feel it, body, mind, yep. Okay, and then I'm more able to let it go. Just see it for what it is, let it float off, clouds in the sky. So self-compassion softens the effects of negative influences in our lives. And it's also very much related to deep satisfaction, emotional intelligence, social connectedness. These are all the benefits of self-compassion, like that. And again, that breaking up of the solidity of the negativity, that I'm always like this, I always do this. I'm not always feeling vulnerable. In fact, I'm not feeling vulnerable most of the time, but sometimes it will come up. We're not always depressed. A lot of even chronically depressed people, chronically anxious people, which is a different affliction, okay? There was a time in their life they probably weren't experiencing severe depression. I know people like that, depressed for 40 years, but I knew them before that period when they weren't depressed. So it's not always in the mind, but we tend to solidify it. Then it stays longer. That habit perpetuates longer and longer. Oh, I see there's all these chats. Okay, the list was, for Lisa, the list, Tara Bennett Goldman, one of her dealing with emotional imbalances or emotional awareness or intelligence, you could look up in one of her books, like that. Okay. Okay, samsara, a Sanskrit term simply that means to turn or to cycle. And what we're cycling through is birth, old age, sickness, and death. In Buddhism, it's all seen as suffering. Samsara is a cycle, cyclic existence is really all it means in Sanskrit, but it refers to a suffering cycle. But to know you can get out of samsara, okay? I'll try to find the name of the book for next week. I'll make a note of that. But I think it's Cultivating Emotional Intelligence, something like that. And thank you. Some of the books that I was referencing. Okay. The schemas again are in that book. Okay. Yes, the session's being recorded. And Emotional Alchemy. Thank you. I think that's the book. Emotional Alchemy. It's in the chat from Kai to everyone. Thank you so much, Kai. Great. Any questions so far other than these questions? You can just put your hand up or unmute in reference to what I'm talking about so far.
I put it in the chat. I have tried to find how to register for the Dalai Lama's empowerment 2 days from now. I can't find any way to register for it.
Okay, so can you take that up with Vajrapani separate from the session? So I'm just talking about questions for the session right now.
Okay, I'm not sure how to do that either, so.
Kai, if you want to put your email and maybe you can, or somebody that can help.
Okay, thank you.
Like that. Thanks very much. I don't think you have to register. I think you just put it on live at the time, as far as I know. That's what we did last time. Yeah.
That's easy.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's like that. Thanks, Peggy. So I want to do, before we part, because I forgot it's 9 o'clock is the end, I want to get this exercise in. I think this will help with, help to start, for us to start to develop some self-compassion. Okay. This is from Kristen Neff. I really like this exercise. If you want to jot some notes down right now, this would be helpful. So feel free if you've got something to write with. I'd like to bring your attention to a few questions right now. And this exercise is called, how would you treat a friend? How would you treat a friend? Okay, so I'd like you to think right now about times when a close friend of yours feels really, really bad about him, her, or themselves. They're really, really struggling. We've all been there with friends. When you've got a very close friend is struggling, how would you respond to your friend in this situation? Especially when you're at your best. Write down a couple sentences what you would typically do, what you would say. And I'd like you to note the tone in which you typically would talk to this friend. Okay. I know some of you might need more time, but let's go on to the next. Okay. Now I'd like you to think about times when you feel bad about yourself and when you're struggling. How do you typically respond to yourself in these situations? So I'd like you to write down a couple sentences, write down what you typically do, what you say, and I'd like you to note the tone in which you talk to yourself. Okay, so did anybody notice a difference? Different or not different? It's different, isn't it? Isn't that interesting? It's completely different, Patty's saying. Okay, it's completely different. Okay, so if it's different, why is it different? Do you ever, I mean, there's curiosity. Ask yourself why it's different. This is your exploration, your homework for the week. Okay, what factors or fears come into play that lead you to treat yourself and others so differently? Okay, once again, you can write this down. What factors or fears come into play that lead you to treat yourself and others so differently? Please explore that question this week. Write down whatever comments that you find. Okay, so it's the wild kingdom out here. Okay, please write down, here's another part, how you think things might change if you responded to yourself in the same way you typically respond to a close friend when they're struggling. Again, write down how you think things might change. This is for the week. If you responded to yourself in the same way you typically respond to a close friend when they're struggling. So if you'd like to take the challenge for the week, why not treat yourself like a good friend and see what happens? So comments, any comments on this? Feel free to open your mic and yeah, it's very different, people are saying. Did you notice your tone? What's your tone like to yourself?
Not nice like the first one.
Right. I mean, it's sometimes shocking, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's so unconscious.
Right. And we've been doing it for years, some of us. Like, again, this is what I was saying is you've got these built-in behavioral things. The beginning is I have to start to become aware that I'm doing it. So again, when I said, you know, do you wake up in the morning with a groan? Do you get out of a chair and your body's stiff? Do you brush your teeth really gently and happily or with a lot of irritation? Do you, you know, it's just to start to begin to notice a general behavioral thing, but we're only noticing it. I'm not going to say, oh, I'm brushing my teeth in a really bad way, I'm bad. I'm going to ask you to make the period at the end of the sentence. I'm just noticing I'm brushing my teeth with irritation right now. You know, and if you need to add, and I love you, or and I'm okay, add it, because you're okay. You're especially okay because you're noticing. So this is basic mindfulness, is just taking this and you are noting and observing. You're observing, you're not judging. In fact, I might sometimes observe that I'm judging. That's all, that's good enough. You know, and you can have a little laugh about it. Wow, I'm judging again, like that. But I'm, you know, but I'm noticing it now, so that's okay, right? I just notice that I'm judging. The more I start to notice it, I can start letting it go. I can start letting it go. Yeah, some people feel shameful, embarrassed. Yeah, it's a different tone. Look at that. Walk into that room, okay? Because it's going to be okay, because we've all been there. We're all in there, in that room with you, okay? But we each have our own rooms, the same like we have our Zoom call, and yet we're all in this together to something. And the difference is sad, as some people are writing in the chat. Okay, but again, that sadness is in there with the self-compassion. We have to look at it. We're turning to the sadness to realize how to practice, to start to get the juice of practicing self-compassion. Does that make sense? People understand why we're turning to the suffering. It's all in there together. Okay? Yep. Tone is more compassionate towards the others, more critical of myself. Again, your exercise this week, and this can be an exercise for the rest of your life. First of all, look at the questions, jot down a few notes if you'd like, but why don't you practice being your own best friend? You're sad one day. What would you say to your sad friend? Say that to yourself. Start to practice now. Say that to yourself. The tone you would use with your friend. Superimpose the face of your friend for a moment on yourself and think, what would I say to he, she, they? What would I say like that? What was the moment in my life when you felt you were worthy of more self-compassion? I don't know if there was one moment, somebody asked. I don't know if there was one moment. But fortunately it started a while ago. So yeah, and we're going to talk about, Sadie, you are enough, you are worthy. We're going to talk about another example we're going to use in the next course is self-mantras, okay? So in Tibetan Buddhism and in Buddhism, we recite mantras. Traditional mantras can be a phenomenal tool to quickly catch the mind and put it in a happier place. But it doesn't always work if you're still angry. You can be angry and you can say, oh, mani padme hum, but you're still holding that anger. But if I look at that anger and kind of say, wow, I'm angry right now, and I'm just going to be there with it for a little bit, you know, and then I want to look at, well, why am I angry? Well, because this person took my job and isn't letting me do that, and I had to do this again, and I didn't want to do it, and I thought I was clear, but then I looked at, you know what? I don't think I was really clear. So, you know, all this stuff, Tibetan Buddhism comes from the mind. So how can I kind of work on my mind in a more gentle way so that next time I can be clear about my plans with this person, that I don't end up in the same situation that caused me to be angry right now? Okay, so again, if you're just saying the mantra Mani Padme Hum, I prefer to go in and look at it, but there are some mantras you can create for yourself. In a sense, sometimes we call them affirmations, and they can be useful. We're going to look a little bit at those in the next session, as well as some other things. Okay, how to imagine that you are that other person. Again, Maria, I was just mentioning, you could superimpose your best friend, the person struggling, the person you would be so kind to, maybe superimpose them on your face for a moment. Think about if they were sitting next to you and telling you the same problem. How would you respond to them sitting next to you? You can visualize like that. They're seated across from you, perhaps. What would you say to them? How would you respond to them? So then put yourself in that position across from you, like that. Yeah, so there's a curious thing. My mind assigns blame for my suffering. When I suffer, I blame myself. But when others suffer, I have compassion. That's very common. That's very common. Very helpful to notice that. Any other last questions? Anything else? Any other comments?
Hey, Amy, this is Walker.
Yes.
I notice we're not focused on fixing things, but when I'm out there in the world and I do a lot of things, sometimes I make mistakes. And through experimentation, I found that when I'm focusing on what I did wrong and really getting wound up about it, I'm not focusing on dealing with the moment or, trying to fix things, it's a distraction. And when I can kind of let go a little bit and say, okay, that wasn't so good. So what am I going to do now? Just kind of move on, acknowledge it, but not get stuck on it. Then
Yeah.
I find I do get better results for whatever's next because I'm paying attention.
Yeah, I think very helpful. I think that's a practice of self-compassion. Okay, because what happens with the lack of the self-compassion, rigidity forms. And so I find that's where people get stuck in that it's very difficult with the rigidity. And then I ruminate in my mind over and over that I did this thing, I did this thing, I did this thing. Okay. And that doesn't help anybody. That makes it more solid. So I really like the idea that you look at it mindfully. Well, that happened. And I am interested in the cause and what's going on and the mechanism behind it, but I'm not overly holding on to it. I'm looking at it gently with all the other experiences of my mind. The other thing that's helpful that we're going to talk about in the next couple sessions is bringing in the positive and letting more airtime for the positive that we're doing.
But also for me, it's like I can't be present with what's going on if I'm kind of getting wound up in my self-criticism. I can't do both.
That's right. And I'm curious, who of you, who felt that they talked to themselves the same as the compassion to their friend, the same to themselves? Yay, great. Cynthia, thank you. Yeah, I mean, there's some people that it's the same voice they've got, you know, so again, we're working on it. So good for you. If you feel like, yep, I've got that going. And okay, so a difficult time sitting with it mindfully. I think I'm not dealing with so we're slowly going to be working, and this is a lifetime practice to work to find the root slowly. It doesn't all uncover in 2 weeks. I'm sorry, this won't be done for you by the end of the course. And this is a course that could really be stretched out over, I mean, I'm really giving kind of short snippets of things. It would be a great retreat or something to do in a longer period. So be patient with yourself, Sadie, about slowly. I mean, the fact that we're all here together right now, we're just starting this process. For some people, it's very new. For some of you, you've been doing it for years. I commend you. But again, please give yourself credit that you're starting. Like, that's really, really powerful. Okay, so let's dedicate the merit. I'd like to stop there. And I'd like to dedicate the merit. What I'd like to do is I'm going to share my screen, because I'd like to do some dedications that Lama Zopa Rinpoche has found very powerful during this COVID time. And this way you can just follow along. And especially the practice of dedicating everything with emptiness. That's Rinpoche's favorite practices. He always says, you know, if people forgot that, they've missed the essence, like that. So let me just share this on my screen with all of you. Okay, I can't seem to share it. Is there a way to
The person who's the host has to make you a host, and then you can share. I think they just did.
Okay.
Yeah, you should be able to do it now.
Okay, super. Wonderful. Okay. So you should have can you see that on your screen, dedication verses? Okay, great. If you'd like to, feel free to join, and I'd like to take whatever positive energy, whatever merit we've created together. I want to thank you so much for joining. And let's invest it in our doing some of these exercises this week. Again, we've got a meditation of feeling the roots of the earth supporting you. You can lend that to your meditation if you'd like. You can be a little bit with sound and just notice your mind labeling at times, or just allow that pause to kind of be in meditation rather than meditating, or to be with sound, let the vibration come in and just experience that. And also the exercises of noting, can I start to treat myself the way I would lend compassion to a dear friend who is struggling or suffering? Can I start to turn that tone, that generosity of spirit towards myself? And what is it that prevents me from doing that? What seems to be getting in the way of that? Okay, we're just looking at maybe some of those behavioral patterns. Okay, so let's invest all of that positive energy into our being able to do these exercises to really lend more compassion to ourselves, so we can show up for all others on the planet with as much compassion as possible. Really dedicated to our swift enlightenment, so we can be of the most benefit to all living beings. May the precious supreme bodhicitta not yet born arise. May that arisen not decline, but increase more and more. However many sick sentient beings there are, may they quickly be freed from all sicknesses. May all the sicknesses without exception of transmigratory beings never occur again. In all my lives never separated from perfect gurus, may I enjoy the magnificent Dharma. By completing the qualities of the grounds and paths, may I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. By the force of the victorious one Tsongkhapa, acting as our direct Mahayana virtuous friend in all our lives, may we never turn away for even a second from the pure path highly admired by the victorious ones. Like the earth, water, fire, and wind, medicines, and monastery firewood, may I always be enjoyed by all sentient beings as they like and without resistance. May I cherish all sentient beings like my own life. May I cherish them much more than myself. May all their negative karma ripen on me, and may all my virtue ripen on them. As long as any sentient being has not been liberated from samsara, may I abide in samsara to help them, even though I could achieve highest enlightenment. Due to all the past, present, and future merits collected by me, the numberless Buddhas, the numberless sentient beings, which are completely empty of existing from their own side, may I, who am completely empty of existing from my own side, achieve the state of full enlightenment, which is completely empty of existing from my own side, and lead all sentient beings who are completely empty of existing from their own side to that state which is completely empty of existing from its own side, by myself alone, whom completely empty of existing from my own side. I fully dedicate all these virtues to be able to train just like the hero Manjushri, who knows reality, and just like Samantabhadra as well. I fully dedicate all my roots of virtue with the dedication praised as the best by all the gone beyond victorious ones of the 3 times in order to have good conduct. The wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the 3 sublime ones, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live forever. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank Vajrapani Institute, who are the main hosts, with Heidi and Kai. Thank you so much. Land of Medicine Buddha as well. I think they're in a bit of a transition right now, and as are we all. And I'd also, just a reminder, His Holiness the Dalai Lama is teaching. I know Peggy was interested in the time for that. I thought it was May 28th evening, our time, is that correct? Okay, there was a mistake, not May 29th, it doesn't start May 29th, it starts on May 28th. My understanding is if you go and search His Holiness on Facebook or on his website, which you can easily find, there should be a click there, and you click and it just comes up. It just started like that. I remember when the last one I just looked on Facebook came up, I clicked and there was His Holiness teaching. So it wasn't something that I'm aware that you need to register for. And it's fantastic to take this 1,000-armed Chenrezig. His Holiness is said to be an embodiment of that Buddha, the 1,000-armed Buddha of infinite compassion. Chenrezig in Tibetan, or Avalokiteshvara in Sanskrit. So I hope to see you there. There's a picture Ken's holding up of the 1,000-armed Chenrezig, like that. So thank you so much. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. East Coast time, I'm leading the prayers for the COVID practices. It takes about 45 minutes if you're interested. 10 a.m. East Coast time. You can find that link on my website. I'll just put that right there. Oops, sorry to everybody. Somebody must have been, here we go. And hosted by our New York Center Shantideva So thank you for joining. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Venerable.
Please
Thank
be
you,
well.
Amy.
Yes.
And
Thank you,
please
Amy.
consider, if you can, to make a
Thank you,
donation
Amy.
to Vajrapani Institute, please, or Land of Medicine Buddha. I so
Thank
appreciate it.
you.
Do you want to open your mic?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Venerable
Good night,
Amy.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
The question this week is to love yourself.
Okay. Thank you.
It's okay.